What's up, listeners? It's Andrea. Today, it's Home Alone in Space. This episode would have ended really differently if it had been Romulans. And we asked the question, is this episode a must-watch or a hard pass for you? Stay tuned.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the #1 place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm your co-host, Shereese.
Hey, I'm your co-host, Andrea. Today we are talking a fan favorite, Season 6, Episode 7, Rascals. This episode was written by Ward Botsford, Diana Botsford, and Michael Piller, and directed by Adam Nimoy, son of Star Trek legend Leonard Nimoy.
Bum, bum, bum.
I know. I was like, oh, that's so fun. I mean, I don't know if that's a bum, but it is really fun. I did a little bit of reading about Adam Nimoy. He did assist in some of the directing of Star Trek. I think it was The Undiscovered Country. And he was a big fan of Star Trek in general and did a bunch of observing of the directing of TNG and ended up kind of picking people's brains and stuff and got to direct this episode, which I think is super cool. And it's such a fun episode.
And well, also I wanted to say, since you were talking about Adam Nimoy, It's really cool that he kind of got into the franchise and was excited about it, because that's not always the case with, kids whose parents are celebrities in anything, whether it's medicine or music or whatever, because sometimes they can be really bitter that thing, took their parents away. So it's really cool that he kind of got into it and is a super fan and stuff. I know watching a documentary with the different captains on all the various Star Trek shows, Kate Milgrew, who plays Captain Janeway, her kids despise Star Trek and don't want anything to do with it and don't even want to hear the words because, when she started acting, they stopped allowing kids to come on set. So her kids were not able to come hang out with her on set all day long. So she was just gone, these 12, 16-hour days for months, for years. So it's really cool that Adam Nimoy got to be a part of it. And my thinking is probably at the time that his dad was acting in the 60s, he was probably able to come on set and hang out and see all the behind the scenes stuff. So that's really cool. Okay, now to the synopsis.
All right. Well, in this episode, the bodies of Captain Picard and 3 other crew members are reduced to those of 12-year-old children in a transporter accident. When a group of Ferengi pirates boards the Enterprise, the children must work with Commander Riker to take back the ship, all while coming to terms with their newly found youth. What are your initial What are your initial thoughts on this one? None of these are bums, okay?
They're not. They're so not. They're so not. Okay. This episode is such a fun one. It is one of my favorite episdes of all time. It's probably not it's not the top 1 or 2, but man, it's, I don't know, top 10, top 20. I don't know. We have a lot of favorite episodes, but this is one of my all-time favorite episodes. I am so excited to talk about this one. And I have to say, after finishing the whole episode, I was like, yeah, it still stands. Not one bit of my enjoyment was lost.
No.
Watching it an 18,000th time.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that. I've always really loved Rascals. It's a really fun episode. I think I also really loved it because when this came out, we were 12, right? We were the age that these kids were, right? And they're running around saving the ship. And all of kids, adventure shows are kids getting to be basically adults, the fun part of adults. You get to drive cars and commandeer stuff and not have to ask people for permission to make an action plan or whatever, right? And obviously with none of the you have to pay bills and whatever part of adulting.
Right.
But I just remember seeing myself so much in that role when I was a little kid, in this episode where I was that's 100% what I would do. I would try to save the ship, right? I just loved it so much. I did not know. This episode is very famous, but it's also really infamous. There is a lot of hate for this episode, and I don't totally get it. I was really surprised to hear that because I always thought it was such a fan favorite. And I know it has been a fan favorite for a lot of people, but I think a lot of people who also are not maybe huge fans of kids, don't like this episode. But,
or maybe just if you're not a kid, watching it as a kid, this was a favorite episode. 100%. And so it's got that nostalgia staying power. Yeah. However, if I were to watch TNG as an adult, I started watching it as an adult, this would definitely be a throwaway episode for me. I'd be oh, it's a whole episode about kids.
Yeah.
Or kind of the whole episodes we have about Alexander, when people are not Alexander, it's I think if I were an adult watching this episode, this would not make my top 10 or top 20. just because it'd be very unrelatable to me. Like, I'd think it was cute, but I'd be like, okay, it's kind of like, so what? Versus some of the other more, bigger topics mentioned in episodes.
Yeah.
But watching it, I think it's very much because we watched it as kids, and because of that nostalgia power, I still remember how I felt, and it's so exciting to me. It just feels like really like a total adventure. But yeah, I could understand that. I could understand being like, oh, it's a whole episode where it's kids doing kid stuff. Like, that might not be as exciting as some of the other, Locutus of Borg episodes that are out there.
I guess I could see that. Like, yeah, it does feel very, very nostalgic because this came out when we were kids. So we saw it from the kid perspective. But yeah, there's a lot of people who are like, oh, not a kid episode. So I see what you mean about that. But I do love this episode so much. But yeah, I was surprised to find so much dislike for this episode. Now, just jumping right in, Ro Laren, in one of the few times we see her at all in season 6, Keiko, Guinan, and Picard are on their way back from a great little vacation that they had. Like, they all kind of had an individual vacation on this planet, and they're shuttling back to the Enterprise, and Picard is just talking their ear off about some archaeological dig that he did and some pottery fragments that he found, and everyone else is just doing that thing where you just exchange silent looks because they won't stop talking about, like, pottery stuff or whatever.
Yeah, which is really cute because you're like, oh, look, Picard has an outside interest other than, like, starships and being an ambassador.
Yes.
I think it's so cute. It's kind of like, do you remember that episode we had way back in season 1 when Picard was in the holodeck and he was like riding horses?
Yes.
Or whatever, and it was like his stunt
that was
double
so long ago.
was riding those horses. Yeah, and it was like, oh, he rides horses. It's like a little slice of life to show that he has more aspects to his character. I love that. And I especially love the looks that everyone's giving each other about him being excited about this. They're just like,
still going on about that pottery fragment, huh? Okay.
More pottery, huh?
Oh, look, more pottery. Well, I do think it's really cute that Picard is nerding out about something beyond, like, command and Starfleet. So you're totally right. I also think, too, I like the line that Guinan said where she's like, you spent a week on the most beautiful planet in the quadrant and you spent the whole time in caves. And he was like, it was really rewarding. Like, where I thought, that's really great.
Yes, I did. It was great.
Yes, and I think that is really awesome because, you know what? Not everybody's cup of tea is sitting, like, at the beach reading a book. It's just not, right? Like,
and we learned that in Captain's Holiday when he went to Risa and he was sitting at the poolside with a book and it did not work for him. He ended up in a cave at gunpoint, might I add. And that was right up his alley. Like, he was loving that kind of vacation.
He was 100% in for that. He was 100% in. And I was like, okay, then.
So this opening scene where we see Ro, Keiko, and Guinan was just such a dopamine hit of, like, happiness for me because I feel like we have not seen these 3 characters in years, like years and years. So even if this was, like, the only time we saw them, which kind of it is, we see them now and then we see them at the end of the episode. Like, that alone, I just was like, oh my gosh, it's Ro. Oh my gosh, it's Guinan. Oh, it's Keiko. Like, I wasn't super excited about Keiko, but I just haven't seen her since she had the baby in 10 Forward with, like, whoever was assaulting them at that time.
Miles,
with the light
Miles
beams,
under, like, some sort of light ball, evil light energy.
The electricity aliens.
Yeah, like, and more electricity
like, oh
monsters.
Gosh, yeah, it's like I haven't seen them in forever. Yeah. So I am super excited that we get to see them. And I am so happy with who they chose to have this transporter accident, especially Keiko, because Keiko is married and has a child. And I think that just adds different dimensions to everyone else who is single and does not have kids. So it just adds different complexities to this problem. It's not just like, it affects my duties.
They did really get some great cross sections of, like, ship life to have this transporter accident. So, they're all talking in the shuttle bay. The Enterprise calls over. They've received a distress signal from Starfleet science team on LIGO 7. We need to get there now. And they're like, okay, well, we're 2 minutes away from intercepting with the Enterprise, which I thought was kind of weird because they showed a shot, like, looking out the view screen and there was no Enterprise anywhere. I was like, are you directly above them? Like, where is the Enterprise? Anyway, that was minor. But then suddenly they're hit in this, like, energy field of some sort. And engines and life support have failed. Structure failure is imminent. And, Riker does the thing where he's like, we've got to get them out of there. There's no time, right? And suddenly O'Brien is like, there's a 40% drop in mass. Like, I might have lost one. And he beams them over and all 4 of them survive. But now they're kids. right? So that's where we're like, oh crap, now your kids. And you're right, like Keiko is a great person to have this experience because you're right, she has to still be a mom and she can't. And like poor Miles and
a wife, and she absolutely
cannot and should not. But like this is one time where I felt really, really bad for Chief O'Brien. You know, I don't super love him.
I agree.
But he was like, what the F am I supposed to do? My wife is now a child. Even when she comes to him and hugs him and wants reassurance, he does the like awkward pat because he's like, I don't want to seem like a creep. Like, this is really weird.
Yeah. And it's all of it's gross and weird. But what I love is that they picked her specifically so we could see how could this affect your whole life, not just your career, which is what we see with Picard. With Ro and Guinan, which is beautiful. We get to see like, Ro revisiting childhood, not in a refugee camp, revisiting childhood on the Enterprise with everything at her fingertips. Now she can really like have an experience that's not marred with fear and lack. And then Guinan, who hasn't been a child in like 800 years, gets to enjoy that again. I just think it was a really good mix. And the only thing that I would say is I also felt really bad for O'Brien. But the other thing I will say is that when he was in the transporter room and he was like, oh, the 40% of the mass has been lost. I think I lost one of them. I was like, I want him to be less calm.
Yes.
I want him to be more panicked and less professional.
Is one of those 4 people.
Because his wife is one of the 4. Yeah. I want him to be like, oh my gosh, Keiko, or something. But he's just like, oh, looks like I might have lost one. Okay. Well, doop. I was like, I get we're being professional, but I would like to not
there, be in this I moment. Never thought I would say the term toxic professionalism. Where it's like,
I'm sure we can attach toxic to just
about anything. Like obviously there's toxic like negativity, but like this is toxic professionalism where Beverly's son has been kidnapped and she's like,
right,
I've got to do the best I can to get him back. I need to do that. You need to save my son. It's like, what? Yeah. Your wife could very well be lost in a transporter accident and you're that calm, Miles. Like, I'm going to say false. Also, did you notice when they all beamed in as kids, Picard was like, thank you, Chief O'Brien. One more minute there. And like, we might have been lost. And he kind of trails off because he realizes like his voice sounds different. He looks around, he notices they're all kids. Everybody is in shock except for Ro, who's just kind of like looking at the floor like she's really bored. I was like, hello? You've just transported in as a child. And she
as she says later, she was contemplating her situation.
I guess, but I mean, girl, you don't start contemplating at second one. First you freak out for a minute and then you calm down and then you contemplate. She was looking as though her souffles did not rise in the oven, or she was like, oh man.
Yeah.
It's like, girl.
To be fair, if you've ever done a photo shoot with so I have a huge family, and we did a photo shoot years and years ago when all the kids were in town, like all the kids were brought in town, all the kids and the kids' kids and the grandkids were brought in town for a big photo shoot.
Yeah.
We had to break them up by ages because there's so many. So it had to be like the oldest grandkids, the middle grandkids, the youngest grandkids, the great grandkids. So with the littlest ones, with a photo shoot, you're like, look over here, so-and-so, one more time, so-and-so, right over here. When you're doing all that arranging, you just see the other kids who have been smiling in place for 6 straight minutes. Like their smile just melts off their face and it turns into a grimace because you can't hold it for that long. So to be fair, these are all 12-year-old kids acting. They probably have filmed this scene like 1,000 times. And in this one shot, when most everybody looked good, she was probably literally bored at that moment. She probably was. Like, I've been standing here for 67 minutes just to here.
You are totally right.
No movement. She was like, what was I supposed to do? Oh, look, shocked, not bored. Right. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I'll give them all the benefit of the doubt on that because they're kids.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, the actress who played young Rolaren, her name is Megan Parlin, and she was just, I feel like she was the most impressive of the whole group. She really was.
I was in love with all of them. I really loved all these kids.
I thought young Keiko was like really perfect. Like she was Keiko. Ro was Ro. But like she was outraged and upset and like frustrated and also irritated that nobody else seemed that upset. She's like, what is wrong with you? Let's go. Megan Parlin just crushed it. I didn't love the Guinan actress. I thought she was really condescending most of the time. And Guinan is never condescending. Even when she actually does know better, she's like a great therapist. She just sort of guides you to the answer. But I felt that the actress was really condescending. Oh, I didn't like her. I never liked young Guinan in this episode. It's just super. It didn't feel like Guinan, I guess, to me.
Yeah, I had the opposite feeling. It felt like Guinan to me because she was still talking like very that slow, calm, like just, kind of the what she was saying and the way she was saying it to me felt very much like Guinan in a little kid's body. So I did not have that experience of her being condescending. I will say I loved all the kids. I think they were super adorable.
They were all really cute.
Just cast it well. I think the whole idea of we're kids, how do we do this as kids was super fun. I guess kind of silly, kind of ridiculous. Like how could kids take over the ship? But they did. It had a very Home Alone feel.
They did save the day. I will say, as a fun little trivia fact, David Tristan Birkin played Little Picard. He also played Rene Picard in season 4, episode 2, Family. It's the same actor. And I was like, look at you, David Tristan Birkin. We're back. We get another mini Picard, which I thought was great. So
good for him. Oh, yeah. Because they could have easily just picked another British kid.
They could have, but I loved it. Well, and I think too, it makes that canon so much stronger because you're like, look at the family resemblance between young Picard and Rene Picard. You look just like your uncle. Yeah, it's really cute. Now, in sickbay, Beverly does find that their DNA was changed. So it made their physical appearance that of pre-adolescence, but beyond the physical change, they're exactly who they were moments ago. And Picard is like, great. I don't have time for this. We need to get to LIGO 7. There's some sort of emergency happening. We got to go. Number 1, you're with me. I love hearing little Picard call him number 1. So that's great.
Number 1, you're with me. And Riker, they're all looking around, and the whole time that Beverly's talking about what happened to them, they're talking amongst themselves, and little Picard has to kind of eavesdrop. Normally, they would talk to him, and he would be included in this conversation.
Yeah, he's like, I'm right
but because he's a kid, they are literally talking over his head and talking amongst themselves, and he has to chime in with okay, well, we gotta go, guys. We gotta go. And they're looking at each other do you want to tell him? Should you tell? I'm not gonna tell him. I'm not gonna tell him anything. Are you gonna tell him? And then he just takes Riker and walks away, and they're just standing there looking after him
how are we gonna manage this?
Exactly gonna work. And you see Riker just looking at him, and then Picard looks at him and he looks away really fast. You're just oh, this is so awkward.
Know.
Riker doesn't want to say hey, sir. And did you notice they all have to remember to say sir? He's sir. He doesn't want to say, hey, sir, you're 12, so
we might need to think this through. Let's take 24 hours and just take a pause.
Process this?
Yeah,
maybe hang out with Troy for a little bit.
He wouldn't be Picard if he didn't do this. That's what makes him so Picard, where he's all right. He goes to the bridge and he starts captaining around, and the senior staff just stare at him.
They're who's this kid on the bridge? Because they don't know this accident.
Yeah, he has to assure everyone that Beverly is on the case, and in the meantime, let's set a class 4 probe over the energy field to study it and hightail it to LIGO 7. And I love that Beverly comes to talk to him, and she's like, buddy, your transformation might be the first step to some sort of degenerative disease. We just don't know. I don't want to remove you from active duty, but I think you may need to step down from active duty for the time being, because 1, your body just went through a tremendous amount of changes, but 2, we don't know if this is going to affect your mind or your other faculties in the near future. So please don't make us remove you. Just take a sabbatical,
Yeah, and she gets him with this line where she's like, well, you're Jean-Luc Picard. What do you think you should do? And then the next thing you know, he's like, oh, fine. He comes out and he's like, Riker, you're in charge from now on. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And Riker just kind of looks at Beverly. They're doing these looks the whole time.
Yes, this is the episode of the looks. Is what it feels
like. So he looks at Beverly thanks, Bev. Thanks for that, because I was
and then she finger guns him I got you, buddy. She's like, I'm
and just walks the captain off the bridge.
Time to go to this classroom. But and meantime, poor Keiko is like trying to tuck Molly in and like read her a story.
Keiko's trying to do her Keikoisms. She's trying to like water the plants and make Miles some coffee and just trying to do the things she normally does in her everyday life as if she wasn't just transformed into a small child. She can't reach anything.
Also, Miles
she's
is just
like,
sitting on the edge of the couch, like biting his nails and watching her
being
really
most
nervously.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's like,
Yeah. He's feeling extremely awkward. He's like,
Yep.
he's got all the body language of stay away from me.
Yes.
So Keiko's like watering the plants, and she's making things where she can't reach, so she gets on a stool. She can't, she's just trying to make it work like nothing happened.
Sure is.
And Miles is like, I could use and then he says coffee, and I'm pretty sure he was gonna say drink. And then realize she's too little for a drink. So then he's like, coffee, let me get some coffee so he could get away from her and get some space. And she's like, I'll get it, Miles, dear. So she goes to get the coffee, and he's like, okay, I guess I'll just sit here then. And then he's like trying to tell her his order and stuff. I know that we've been married for years. Like, I know how you take your coffee. Yeah. And then when she brings it, he's like, it's hot, be careful. She's like, Miles, like, stop treating me like a child. Yeah. And he's like, but you are a child,
but you're not.
So then
but you're also very much not a child. Yeah.
She tries to cuddle with him for comfort, and he's like, oh, okay. Yeah. That's when he gets off the couch. He's like, all right, I don't need coffee. I do need a vodka and no synthahol. Thank you. Because I need the real deal. This is not working. Yeah. But he doesn't say all that. He just goes, oh, this is kind of weird. He says like the lightest little thing, and she loses it. She's like, is our marriage over? Our family's dissolved? Like, she just does this spiral thinking where it's but wouldn't you though? But like, wouldn't you? Like, you just were turned into a kid and you're married and your spouse is like, this is not going to work. And you're like, oh God, is it over? It's like, no. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is you are a kid. Yeah. Things are different. This just happened like 5 minutes ago. Like, I think you should probably still be in sick bay. Take stock. Yeah, I think you should still be in sick bay. You should still be in sick bay getting some sort of scan to something. Or blood test. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, then of course, the baby calls for mom, and Keiko's like, I'll do it, baby. And she's like, not you. I want my mom. And so then Keiko's like so devastated. And you're just like, poor Keiko. Yeah. Like, you cannot just slide back into your regular routine. Yeah. Once you've been reduced to a 12-year-old. I think it was hardest on her than all of the other crew that were transformed, because now she has no place in her own life. Which is really hard. Really and Ro is feeling the same way, where she is doing exactly what I would be doing, where it's like, I just want to be left alone. I need to think. I just need to sit and think and process this right now. And I need to figure out some kind of way to undo this, and like, there must be some way. It's freaking Star Trek. Here's something I don't love is when this is why I didn't love young Guinan as this role. Cause it didn't, to me, here's how it did not feel Guinan-y. She comes to kind of like hang out with Ro, and Ro is like, I don't want any company. Like, I just want to be alone. She's like, no, you don't. It's like, listen, when I say I want to be left alone, please just respect that and leave me alone. Like, it doesn't matter. But that's literally how they met. With that exact conversation, I know. And that's how they became friends. No, I know. But like, after, like with adult Guinan, she has a way of being like, I don't know if you want to be left alone, because if so, you wouldn't have come to 10 forward. But Guinan followed her to her quarters. And so it's like, where else do you want me to go? I am literally in my quarters asking to be left alone. And then Guinan's like, I bet you were a jumper. I bet you jumped on the bed all the time. It's like, can you please leave me alone, do the thing that I've asked, and just leave me alone so I can think. But I guess if she did, we wouldn't have this whole scene. But I was like, Guinan, girl, you're a little bit too okay with all of this, where she's like, nah, I guess I'm a kid again. Huh. Let's go jump on the bed. And I was like, no, see, even that is weird. Like, even that is weird, because that takes a minute to like adjust to, where you're like, what the F just happened? See, I felt the exact opposite about that, because I felt like her pushing was exactly what Guinan did when they first met, which is why they were friends. And I loved that Guinan pulled Ro out of her shell, and that she's jumping and giggling on the bed, because I don't think there's any reality where she would have done that without Guinan being there. She would have pouted and been miserable, which is her prerogative, until she was finally turned back into an adult. But I feel like Guinan pushed her in a way that allowed her to glimpse her childhood in a different way and access that. Like, she's jumping and giggling. We have never seen Ro Laird giggle in ever, nor will we ever see it again, by the way. She's not a giggler. And she's not a jumper either. That's not her jam. That's not her jam. So I actually love this scene, because I was like, oh my gosh, you get to see Ro like laughing and just enjoying life without being so tied to like duty. Being serious. She really felt Yeah, and she really felt like lost without her duty, because she felt like, what am I supposed to do? What can I do? And she was telling Guinan, work is fun. That's what's fun. And it's not really fun, but it's more like it gives her a function.
She has purpose, yeah.
And yeah, I very much feel like, I don't know about you, but for me, I very much feel like I'm seeing this whole entire scene through my personal lens of how I deal in my world right now. So I don't feel like anyone's kind of like in my space or pushing me to do things I don't want, but I do feel that sometimes I can be too tied to like work to have fun. So this scene, I saw it through those lenses of like, wow, I'm so glad she had a friend who helped her have fun when she would not have had fun
on her own
otherwise, ever, like in a million years. And it was just nice to see her laugh.
It was nice to see
and Guinan was very well adjusted. And
well, I
she
feel
was just
like,
you know what, we can't control it. So.
I don't think she was well adjusted. I think she was too, like, there is such a thing as being like, you know, it's like that toxic positivity where you're like, everything is perfect all the time. It's like, like, I think that the normal reaction would have been more like Picard's or Keiko's or Rose, even like they're very different people. So they had different types of reactions, but Guinan just like not having a problem with any of this is like, that's also really weird. I feel like that's also unhealthy.
Yeah. Well, she did say she had a problem with it. She said, I do have a problem with it, but I can't change it. So I'm going to enjoy it. So I think it was like a conscious choice of like, this is a situation I can't change. So I'm going to enjoy it instead of focusing on what I can't change.
But like what happens,
which does really lead to suffering.
What happens, yeah, but also like what happens if it can't get changed back? At some point, you're going to have to deal with that because you just have to. Like at some point, like if the transporter can't transport you back, then what do? You're just going to be like, well, I guess I can't do anything about it. It's like, that just doesn't feel normal.
I guess the question is, what does deal with it look like? Does deal with it mean she has to be depressed? Does deal with it mean she has to be sad? Does deal with it mean she has to be angry? So I guess it just depends, like, what does deal with it mean? Because I think that's what, if I said that phrase, like she needs to quote unquote deal with her situation, I would mean she needs to have some kind of really ultra negative experience and then somehow recover from it and then get back to the point she is right now where she's happy. But is that necessary? I don't know.
I mean, I just think that it's not, you know, it's as if like someone passed away and you're like, well, there's nothing I can do about it. So I'm just going to like look on the bright side. It's like, well, okay. At some point you need to process how you feel about this. So I think you're right. Like when you say someone has to deal with their feelings, like it does feel in a way to be like, you need to have some negative emotion. But I think being completely unbothered by this completely unscripted, unasked for, like massive change in your life, super shocking transformation, like you don't feel anything about this other than like, I'm gonna go jump on the bed. I was like, that to me just felt weird, where it's like normally people would be like, okay, oh my gosh, what just happened? Is there a way to go back?
She should at the very least have shock.
She should have been shocked or something, right? It's like something shocking happens and she's like, well, I'm Guinan, nothing ever bothers me, which I don't think is true. Like I think Guinan is like a lovely person, but she's not like, she's not free from like stress or worry or being shocked by anything. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Now, in the meantime, when all this is happening, Troy goes to pay Picard a visit and see how he's doing, which I thought was really great because this is where you're needed here. He's really practical and he's realizing that like no one will really take him seriously. And Troy is like, well, what about going back to the academy? Like take another degree. And he was like, what? And be Wesley Crusher's roommate? No, you know, but I do love that he's like, well, I mean, maybe I could do the academy. But he's like, I don't know. I've spent my whole life looking forward. This sort of would feel like going backward. And she's like, okay, well, look at this super boring pottery shards that you have on your table. Like maybe you want to spend some time with some archaeology, like take a sabbatical for like 5 years, 10 years or whatever, like do that. And he was like, maybe, you know, like I thought he was like being he was making the best out of a crappy situation, I guess. Like he was upset about it. And then he was like, well, I do have all this time. And she says, in a way, you're very lucky. You have a chance to do what most people only dream about, having a second childhood without the pain of growing up again. My question then for you, Shereese, is, would you do this if you had the opportunity?
Would I do what? Make myself young again?
Would you transport yourself and be 12 again without the pain of growing up and all the angsty, adolescent-y stuff? Would you want to like turn back the clock like 20 years?
Like I wouldn't choose this because this is crazy. But if this happened, I would definitely make the most of it because you have the youth, but you also have the experience. Yes. And the whole point of growing up is experience, is you're learning how the world works. You're learning your own preferences. You're learning what you can, do and don't like, all these things. Yeah. That's the point of growing up. And I think going back, I mean, gosh, 12, like I would very much hate to be 12. Yeah. Like I'd probably pick a different age to go back to. Yeah. I'd probably go back to 26.
I was going to say, like, can I do like 29 again? I would be okay with starting at 29 again.
Yeah. Can I be old enough to like, vote and
have
drink
my own
if
place?
I chose to, which I wouldn't, but I could. Yeah, have my own place. Like, some I wouldn't want to be a child, but the idea of going back, rewinding the clock like 10, 20 years, and then being able to live then with what I know now, I think would be really, really powerful. Yeah. There's so many things that I'd be like, well, now I know I don't have to worry about XYZ that I was so worried about before. Yeah. And I think I would do a lot more, I think. What about you?
I think
Would you go back to 12 if you had the choice?
No. And here's why. Like with the experience that I have now, going back to 12, it's like, yeah, you can have kind of like a childhood over again on your terms, which sounds really nice, but think about how lonely that life is. Like your friends that are within your same like physical age are not where you're at mentally or emotionally. Yeah. If you have adult friends, it's kind of awkward and weird to do that. Let's say, you turn back to 12 and you live till like 18 or 17 or 16 and you meet like some 16-year-old who wants to be a romantic partner with you. And you're like, but I'm not actually 16. Like it just I feel like it would be really lonely. Yeah. If I had a transporter accident.
You'd be an anachronism.
Yeah. Again. If I had a transporter accident and it sent me back to like 23, 24, great. I could still have like enough youth to do all the like fun adventure stuff I like to do without waking up with like hip pain, leg pain, knee pain, foot pain, and all the other stuff I'm starting to wake up with now in my 40s. And I'm like, crap, like I was thinking about skydiving today and I was like, oh God, I really want to go do that again. And then I was like, yeah, if I hurt my back or something, that's it. Like, I have to start thinking about stuff like that now. It's like, which I don't like having to think about. Sucks.
So I think the consensus is we would both go back if this was an option, but we would go back to a time when we were still adults because being a kid is just, honestly, I remember being a kid. It wasn't that great.
No,
my childhood wasn't super duper awesome, but also just being a kid in general was not awesome because you have to ask permission for everything. You can't do anything or go anywhere by yourself. You have no money. You have no power. You have no authority. You have no influence. You're at the whims and mercy of what adults want to do in your life.
All the time. All day, every day.
It's just not great. And if I was an adult trapped in that body, that would be extremely frustrating to me. Because it was extremely frustrating when I was a kid. Yeah. So, we would both go back to like early 20s. Yeah. That's really as early as it'd be.
So
like,
I wouldn't even be young, teens. But not painfully young. Now, Beverly finds that little Picard's DNA, along with the rest of them that were like transformed, is the same DNA as like grown-up Picards yesterday, with the exception of some nucleic acid sequences that are like responsible for aging. And she was talking about like RVAs, and I actually Googled it because I was like, I've done a bunch of cell and molecular biology, but so many years ago, I Googled it. That's not a thing, but sounds great.
No,
sounds totally great. I was like, awesome. RVA. She was talking, got it.
I was like, I have multiple degrees in genetics. That's not a thing, but it totally sounds like a thing. And when she's showing the sequences, that it's just DNA sequences. That's all she's showing. But the DNA sequences are so pretty. I just love seeing them on the panel.
How they kind of go by.
I love DNA sequences in general. Yeah, it's just very elegant, beautiful.
My mom recently spent a couple of days in the hospital. And so I was there with her. And like she was in like the new wing that they had like recently opened of this hospital. And I was like, wow, this is really nice. But I just kept thinking, it's just no sick bay. I kept thinking, and I was like, gosh, can somebody,
where are the L cars?
Where are all the L cars? Where's the blue and the red water? Where's the hypo sprays? Like, where is that bed that looks not very comfortable? You know what I mean? Like,
where's that IKEA bed? Floating against the wall. Yeah, you know what? That's so true. I just went to the doctor recently and I got a whole bunch of injections and stuff.
Fun.
If that could have been a hypo spray, it just would have made life so much easier. Can we get on that?
Yeah.
People? Like, just to be like, shh, and it's done. No poking,
via osmosis. Yeah. Like, that's all. Amazing. That's all we need.
Amazing.
Anyway, so she says, I may be able to input their old DNA sequence into the transporter and bring them back that way. And I was like, cool, let's do that now. But she's like, but I can't do that until we figure out how and why this happened. No, not really. you know how to cure them. It literally takes 10 seconds. Just do it right now. And then we won't have this whole problem.
But her thinking is, if we don't know what caused it, that could just happen immediately again. Like we transport them through and then boom, they like are transported back because we don't know.
That's true. They could come back as like infants and then you're like, F this.
Yeah, and that's what Riker said. Like, okay, or we could try that and they come back even younger because we're like, oops, there was a variable we didn't know about. So she has a solution. She just wants to make sure it's going to work before they try it on their only
science.
4 guinea pig.
Yeah, I was thinking space cowboy science. So it's like, just try it. Let's see what happens.
Well, she did try it with the plants. So that was, well, she didn't put them in the transporter, but she aged the plants and found that the plants grew up just fine. Yeah. So she was like, if we do nothing, they will grow up. So that's good to know because it could have been possible where they're stuck at 12.
Or it could have been some Benjamin Button where they just get younger until they die or something. And you're like,
exactly. Exactly. So we find out they went younger, but they're going to age again. So if we do nothing, it'll actually all be fine. Yeah. Just, you know, their lives are ruined, but they'll live, you know, they won't stay 12 forever or get younger and younger. So yeah, we've got a solution. As soon as we figure out what causes to happen and we know it's not going to happen again, we'll pop them in the transporter.
Yeah, and then we'll easy bake oven them until they're adults. Yeah.
And can we just give Reg some credit yet again for why he's totally justified in being afraid of?
Yeah, 100%. Now we're seeing some massively. Yeah. Not only do you have silkworms in the transporter, you've got I hate that episode. And then you've got this happen. It's like, dang, okay. Now,
shuttles forever.
Geordi is doing some shuttlecraft CSI. And he's like, hold on. Somehow the molecular structure of everything on the shuttlecraft has been broken down to its constituent parts in this energy field. Like, what is going on? Right. So they're like, okay, let's get this all to like some fancy sounding lab and figure out what's happening. Cause like he takes a piece of the titanium hull and just crumples it like a wafer cracker, like in his hand. And it's like, oh, that is not good.
I was so wondering what that fabric was what that material was, because when they looked down at like the hull that was at their feet, it looked like egg cartons.
It kind of did.
Know, like cardboard.
You know what? Okay. Christmas just passed at the time of this recording. And this year, I usually make everything for Christmas on my tree. And this year I made this like dough out of cornstarch and baking soda and water that you like simmer and stir and it gets really thick and it becomes a dough. You knead it, you roll it out. And I punched out like 200 little stars and like strung them up on like some twine. And then I had like a thing of stars. And I was like, cool. I dried them in the oven for a couple of hours on like a low setting so that they like baked solid and I could like stitch them on that line. But a few of them, like I was a little bit rough with and they just like crumbled apart. And I was like, oh, it reminded me a lot of that where I was like, you could probably make like kind of a dry, dehydrated like dough of some sort. And then you could just crumple it or like soap or something that's like fine shaved. I was wondering about that too. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's like that baking soda kind of dough or something similar to that, like a salt dough that you could just crunch it. But it was really cool.
Interesting.
That's my theory, but I have no idea.
No, I'm going to say that's true.
Okay. Now, Dinah and Ro are hanging out, and I think this is where she makes her like jump on the bed and stuff.
Yeah, this is the jumping on the bed part.
Also, I'm just going to say those beds look so effing uncomfortable. Like, yeah, they look so bad.
We can establish that the entire Enterprise was furnished by IKEA. Now, I do love IKEA. Because, you know, you get cheap stuff and you can put it together yourself. Super fun. But it ends up being Enterprise furniture.
God, you're so right.
It is hard. It is uncomfortable. It looks very cool and futuristic.
Until you sit on it. You
kind of don't want to lay on it or sit on it. You just want to look at it and be like, whoa, that's cool. Yeah, so they start jumping on this ridiculously hard bed with absolutely no give whatsoever. Yeah. But maybe that's for the best since the ceiling is directly over their heads. So they have this really cute scene of them just giggling and jumping. And we're back in engineering where Geordi's telling them what he discovered about the crumbly dough part of the hull. And they're like, okay, there was some reversion field that happened. And what happened was that energy field that the ship ran into masked just specifically those DNA strands. They were hidden. So when the transporter reconstituted them, it had no information for that part of them. So it just reconstituted them as kids. So they're like, oh, okay, well then we can definitely just fix it by just putting them in the transporter and out because there's no reversion field. And Beverly said, as long as there's no reversion field when we put them through this time, it'll be totally fine. But Riker gets called away and he's like, let's talk about this later. And I was like, they don't need you to talk about this. They can just do it right now. Like we don't need a powwow. Like they can just do it. But anyways, Riker gets called away, goes to the bridge. And they're like, okay, we're looking for this science vessel that disappeared, that sent out a distress call. We're not seeing it. Maybe it's over here, maybe it's over there. And then suddenly Worf is like, red alert, there are 2 Klingon birds of prey that just decloaked, and these ships start firing on them.
Immediately.
And in about 3.2 seconds, life support's down, warp power's off, shields are down, and they're being boarded.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy moly, like the Enterprise is looking really weak.
Yeah. And they continue
right
to do so. They continue to look this week, like throughout a bunch of the series, where it's kind of like the Worf effect, where it's like,
it totally is.
like, oh, this ship is so state of the art. It's the best of the everything. And then it's like, pew, like immediately down by like 2 phaser
it's like
blasts.
one shot and it's down.
It's a one shot and you're dead. Now, did you notice that little Picard sees the red alert? He's in his quarters and he rushes to close his book before heading to the bridge.
Because he didn't want to lose his place.
I mean, exactly. No, he shut the book. Like the book was open. I was like, buddy, I don't think there's any dust on the Enterprise. You don't have to worry about like anything happening to the book. But I was like, okay, whatever. And they're like, we're being boarded, right? But it's not the Klingons, it's the Ferengi. And like,
which makes no sense.
No sense. Where you're like,
where the F did
what?
They get 2 Klingon
How
ships?
did you get this, right? And in the very last second, thank goodness, Riker is like, computer, shut down command, option, Riker, Omega.
Lock out all the command codes,
Yeah, and it was like, oh, dear God. Now, little Picard is found in the turbo lift and is like thrown into daycare with the little kids, which does allow him a chance to meet and strategize with like Ro, and even like Guinan and Keiko and everybody, right? And Guinan is like, take a look around, Jean-Luc. We're not adults. We look like kids. We might as well start thinking like kids and acting like kids to like solve this problem, which I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, because you're not gonna get very far behaving like an adult in this situation.
Right.
You're just not,
We've established no one will take you seriously. No one is taking you seriously. So let's not even try to use that particular tool.
Yeah.
So the Ferengi start beaming all able-bodied adults down to the planet's surface. But they keep Riker because he's the one who locked out the command codes. So he's the one they need to unlock the command codes. So the Ferengi head, Damon Loren, is like, basically he threatens Riker like every 2 seconds, like, we're going to start executing the crew, we're going to start killing the crew, we're going to start killing people to get Riker to do what he wants. And it actually, as I'm saying it right now, it reminds me of that episode in season 1 when we see Picard's Stargazer, which gets kidnapped by the Ferengi or whatever, and they're like, turn it up to level 10, up to level 10, up again to level 10. And you're like, haven't we done level 10 like 8 times?
It's like when somebody's holding somebody at gunpoint in a movie and they keep cocking the pistol like they're about to shoot, but it's like, but it was already cocked. Like,
wasn't it cocked like 4 times ago? Yeah. And they're like, cocked it again. You're like,
okay, I don't think you guys know how guns work.
Yeah.
The serious
because you keep so I'll just wait for you to turn it back off, and then I think it'll be fine.
Cock it again when you want to prove your point. Yeah. But yeah, Damon is like, yeah, we're gonna send everybody, everybody we sent.
We're going to kill everyone. We're going to start killing people. We're going to kill them for real, Riker, if you don't unlock it. And Riker's just like, no. And then 5 minutes later, Riker, you better unlock it or we're going to start killing people. No. Maybe you should call his bluff. I don't know, because I don't think anybody's really believing you, Damon. You're over here obsessing about the goldfish tank and stuff. Nobody's taking you seriously either.
I did see him trying to get to that lionfish, and I was like, just so you know, buddy, that's extremely poisonous. So you shan't be eating that. But okay. All right. Also, I'm not worried about you eating that because you don't even know how to open the goddamn thing. So like, good luck. He's just like,
the lionfish is safe.
Yeah, the lionfish is like sticking his tongue out from like the other side of the glass, like neener. Yeah. I guess we're kids now. But Picard is struggling with the classroom computer, and Ro was like, wait a minute, there's a Jeffries tube that leads straight to the kids' room, which does not seem safe. And Picard and Keiko find like Alexander, he's playing with like this little RC car that looks really cool, and I really want that. And he's like, can I borrow this? And I love that Alexander's like, yes, sir. Like, he's just so excited to be like on the same level kind of as the captain.
And isn't it fun to see Alexander again?
It is.
Like, I feel like everybody was in this episode.
And he's being really cute and not like a little stinker. And you're like, okay, see, this is really adorable. And they take his little RC car and lead the Ferengi away, while they sneak into the transporter and grab phasers and stuff. And like, and
do some tippy typing on the pad to set up the transporter to do something.
I got the phasers. Let's go. Yeah. And like Alexander gets into it. Like he like sets a Ferengi to like chase after him, but he like doubles back and takes some hypo sprays from sickbay. And I was like, hell yeah. Alexander's getting in on the shenanigans. This is great. You know, and Ro and Guinan are crawling through the Jeffries tube. And I love that like little Picard throws a tantrum and he's like, I want to see my father. Let me see my father. And the Ferengi's
no.
And the Ferengi,
that was like
the
my
Ferengi
favorite scene
is
as a kid.
100% me, where it's like, oh my God, what do I have to do to get this kid to shut up? So he takes him to Riker.
The Ferengi is not at all me. I'd be like, if you don't, I would snatch him up, throw him back in that room, and lock that door. He could throw a tantrum all he wants.
From in there.
Why it's good I'm not a parent. He could throw his tantrum all he wants. It wouldn't bother me at all.
You know what? You're right. You're right. You are super right.
If I was a Ferengi taking over the ship,
I'd be like, computer, dampen sound, 100%. Thank you.
Yeah, or just like, computer, lock door. Doot doot, and just like, who cares? Who even cares? Why is he even standing guard with the kids? Why do they even have? There's so many questions. But this works great for Picard. Picard is like, there's only one way I can think to get to the bridge, and I'm not gonna like it. And this is his one thought, was to throw a tantrum. The tantrum totally works. In the next scene, you see the Ferengi toss him into the observation lounge
with Riker,
to where Riker's staring at him like, what's going on? And then little Picard is like, father, and runs over and hugs him. And you're like, is anyone wondering why his son has a British accent, but he
or also a Starfleet uniform with 4 pips on it and a working comm badge? Like, that's a hell of a cosplay, little Picard.
It sure is. So anyways, they hug and Riker's just like, son, okay.
Hey, he goes, you're my number one dad.
Yeah, they have this great conversation in code where he's like, can't you just turn on the computers in the kids' room because we're so bored? And Riker's like, wink, wink, got it. And I love these moments where they're talking in code and you see there's so many things passing between them in plain sight, but the other person can't see it. I love, love, love these moments. So Riker gets the message. They take little Picard back to the schoolroom, toss him back in. And then the away team is back there and they're like, Captain, report, and he's all like, everything worked well. We'll have the computers on in a minute. So then the Daemon pulls Riker back into the ready room and is like, I just found out that your son is on board. If you don't release the codes, we're going to start killing the children, starting with your son. So this is like death threat number 16. And Riker's like, okay, I guess I'll do it this time. But really, he's only doing it because Picard asked him to. And he's like, and you're going to tell, what's his name, Mordock or something like that? You're going to tell him, Morda, you're going to tell Morda exactly how to do the controls. And he's like, all right, I'll tell him exactly how to work the entire Enterprise.
I love how he goes, anything to not hurt my son. It's like, cool. Sounds legit. Sounds totally like believable. Okay, fine. Yeah, so this is one of my favorite scenes of all. It's like my top 10 favorite scenes of all of Star Trek. When Riker is like, Treknology BSing, like, with Morda, and Morda is so confused. Now, here's the thing. This is what I love about this scene so much, is that all the Treknology we have ever heard is totally made up, right? Phase inducers, dilithium crystals, all of that, right? But like, it has so much world building to it that like, we're like, Now, they're giving us just as made up words, but we know that they're complete BS, which I think is so brilliant.
They're made up words that feel more made up.
Because they sound more made up, where they're like, the Fabian transducer hypoconduit. You know what that is, right? Yeah. Don't touch that. It's like, it's just so great. So I've got a little snippet of the scene to play because it's just so much fun. Here is Riker trying to pull the wool over Morda's eyes while he secretly unlocks the kid's computer code so that Picard can access the computer.
Okay, Morda. The Enterprise computer system is controlled by 3 primary main processor cores, cross-linked with redundant Melicort's Ramostat 14 kiloquad interface modules. The core element is based on an FTL nanoprocessor with 25 bilateral calolaterals, with 20 of those being slaved into the primary Heisenfram terminal. Now, you do know what a bilateral calolateral is.
Well, of course I do, human. I am not stupid.
All of these, when he goes, don't touch that. That'll overload everything. He's like, oh, okay.
And he uses, like, I just wrote in my notes, pride comes before a fall, because he knows how proud the Ferengi are. So he purposefully uses all this techno babble and then looks at him like, you get it, right?
You know what that is,
so
right?
that Morton will be like, I understand, human. I'm not stupid. Yeah. Just say it again and explain it a little slower, you know, but it's because he's so prideful that he can't be like, wait, that sounds totally made up. Or like, I don't understand anything you're saying. He can't say that with his pride, right? So he has to be like, yeah, I think I got it, but say it one more time. And Riker says it again, totally making it up the whole way. It's such a great
parietal scene. You know, yeah, he just comes up with all these words. Like,
it's great.
He just comes up with all of these like nonsense bibble babble words, and they're hysterical. Now, what I'm very impressed by is not only is he mentally able to like keep the steady stream of just BS coming out of his mouth that sounds believable enough, but he's also, without looking, hitting buttons to like allow the command lockout to be overridden in the kids' schoolroom 8. And it's like, how did you manage to do that? That is impressive. Now, if the command lockout works, you know, the kids are ready. They have the little RC car that the Ferengi picked up and put in the transporter. They put comm badges on the front and back of it. So the second you touch anything, it's like a little bumper. The comm badge is activated and they're transported out. So that Ferengi gets transported from inside the transporter room to on the transporter pad, but the transporter pad has a force field around it. So he can't get off the pad. And
it's a security force field, and it's got the weapons deactivation that transporters always do. So even if they bring weapons with them into the transporter, they won't
not going to work.
So they can't like blast the beam and get back out.
It's not going to work at all.
They're just totally trapped, which is just
so freaking cool. And like Ro and Guinan like sneak up behind some Ferengi who are looking at the warp core. And this is the kind of Ro is becoming that kid part where they go, you know, before they like go, tag, you're it, and then they run away. And as the Ferengi turn, they're transported away. And then I love that Keiko just like hypo sprays some dude, like takes him out.
Right, and then just puts the comm badge on him and just like pushes it for him. And then Alexander comes out of the schoolroom to the guard for the schoolroom and goes, I found this. Is this yours? And he's like, what? And he hands it to him and it's a comm badge. So as soon as he picks it up, he pushes it. And then he gets transported.
Alexander had the comm badge in his hand, like he had his fingers around it like a little cage, so it couldn't push on them.
So you couldn't see what it was.
Yes, the guy couldn't see what it was. And so when the Ferengi grabs it, the pressure in his hand, it automatically pushed it. So now it's worked. I love this. This is super fun. It's like Home Alone in space. Right. Now the Ferengi are trapped on the transporter pad with a force field around it. There's only 2 Ferengis left on the bridge. So Riker Klingon punches one of them, like the double-fisted punch.
Yes. So Picard comes onto the bridge suddenly, and they both turn to be like, what the? And as soon as Riker sees Picard, the Ferengi's back is turned because he's looking at Picard all confused. So that's when Riker Klingon punches him. It's like that was the perfect distraction that he needed. And he just like falls all out. I mean, this was a great hit.
It was.
Like,
also, Riker is not a small dude.
Down.
He's a big, strapping T-bone steak of a man. Like, he just put some force into that thing. And that Ferengi went down like an omelet. Like, just like, you just couldn't stand on your own at all.
He totally did. And then instead of Riker going in to take out the Daemon, who you think he would, Picard does it because this was his plan and this is his ship. So he walks in as little Picard, holding nothing but a phaser, and then he lifts the phaser slowly, and he's like, I believe you're sitting in my chair. It's just such a great line. You're just like,
so good.
And Damon's like, man, I lost this. I don't know what just happened, or where this kid came from, or why he has a weapon.
Doesn't matter who. All I know is I'm out. Yeah, dang it.
I think I lost.
I guess I lost, right? So the day is saved. And I guess they've handled all of that and have brought everybody back up from the surface and saved the science station.
Yeah,
Picard
gives like a one-line sentence of the whole day is saved. They turned them into the Ferengi Alliance. The Ferengi Alliance had no idea they were out here stealing
ships. They didn't.
Enslaving people. I mean, I don't think they did, but I also don't think they'd be like shocked.
Yeah.
And I also wonder what kind of like laws they would even have, because their laws are all about acquisition. So like maybe they took the birds of prey. I don't know. Anyways, they got handled. They got the science vessel team, like that whole crew. They beamed them off the planet. They stopped the mining operations. They got the crew back. All is well. The only thing left to do is try out Beverly's miracle cure. of using the transporter.
Yeah, Dr. Beverly's miracle cure. And they put Picard on the transport pad. They do the transport magic, and he comes back as the Picard that we know and love. And I love that when he was turned into a kid, it took him a minute to like get used to having hair again. And it was kind of funny to see old Picard like kind of swiping his like pate and being like, oh, that's gone. That was fun while that lasted.
Yep. Yes, I'm back to normal.
Now, everything, it works. So it works. Now, the only one left is Ro, who we see, she's kind of decided to hold off on doing the transport magic for just maybe a few more hours. And we find her back in the classroom, and she's drawing a picture of her mother, and her mother looks astoundingly like Rolaren, which I was like, oh, it's a great picture. Whoever did that artwork, A+
is magical.
And I love that Guinan goes, she's an adult, and she's like, so it's your turn. And Ro's like, do I have to? She's like, no, not if you don't want to. Like, it's there whenever you're ready. Like, you can be a kid for another day or whatever.
Like, transporter's not going anywhere.
Transporter's not going anywhere.
You can hang out if you want. And Ro's like,
okay, I guess I can be a kid for a little bit.
Oh, for crying out loud. You're like, good. I'm glad.
Finally.
Like, I was just really happy to see her have a normal child moment.
Yes.
Because she didn't have a great childhood. Just to have a moment. Just a moment.
Yeah.
Just an hour, 2 hours, whatever, of just like coloring.
Which also I feel like now that we know what happened, you could replicate that, right? That could be a vacation right there where people are like, great, I'm bringing money, I'm bringing whatever, even just going to the holodeck. Like, I want to do the transport thing where it makes me a kid for like a day or a weekend where I can just be a kid and have all kid energy and kid like creativity, because like as we get older, our bodies, like we just get tired more easily and we don't have like that endless supply of energy that little kids do. But I wonder if that would have some like deleterious effects like that accumulate over time by doing that transporter back and forth.
No, science magic.
Science magic. But I feel like that would be pretty awesome because if you ended up growing up like Ro or like Tasha Yar, like who had like really horrific childhoods, like you can go back and like experience life as a child again for a little bit at a time or like on your schedule of convenience. I feel like that'd be really, really awesome. And if Beverly knows how to like age them down and age them back up, she could age you down to like 25. That'd be so sweet.
She could age you to whatever.
Yeah, to whatever.
Whatever. That's a really good point that I never thought about, that you could do, since we're talking about technology in the future where it's potentially limitless opportunities, a type of vacation, a type of shore leave could be going into the past or even to the future, right? Like of what you think the future would be, and you could program the computer to make projections. But, going into the past and reliving your childhood or moments or just being a kid again and doing new stuff with a grown-up mind, you could even probably change your mind to like your childhood mind during the time period and really, and do some kind of way where you can remember what happened and create new memories, which is really a really wild thought. I think if it was a vacation, I'd be more open to it. I still am very averse to being a child. Like, I just do not see a lot of benefits in that.
I think you're one of those people who was never really a child. Like
I'm kind of Rolaren.
You kind of are Rolaren, but maybe without the refugee camp part. But like
minus the refugee camp part.
But like some people, you and like another one of our mutual friends is like she was always an adult since she was born, right? Where I have always been a kid at heart. I'm still a huge kid at heart. I don't like adulting that much. It's not that there are aspects that I really love about my life that, that come with being an adult, where it's like, I have my house the way I like it. I do what I want on my schedule. Like right now, because it's winter break and it's just a few days after Christmas when we recorded this. As a teacher, I have like another 10 days of break where I'm like, cool, I can do whatever I want. And that might include just waking up late, going to bed late, watching movies, eating junk food, just whatever I want. Like
which is literally being
being a kid, right? Except like you're not at the whims. If you did this as like a retreat in the future, everybody knows you're adults, but you're just doing a kid retreat. So it's like, you're not at the whims and mercies of like whatever adults feel like doing or dragging you anywhere. Money is now not an issue at all. Like it's awesome. It's really cool. So anyway, I feel like that would be really awesome. But
I feel like we should do a poll on Instagram.
I'm going to put that up actually as a poll Let us know what you guys think. That poll is up now on our Instagram stories at the TNG Podcast. Come check it out. Shereese, what are your final thoughts on this episode before we fully wrap?
Yeah, this one is just such a fun, feel-good episode. And to me, it has just enough sci-fi elements to make it feel like a legit Star Trek episode. So I love this one so much, and I'm a little bit sad it's over. What are your final thoughts?
You know, I'm kind of with you on that, but something I never actually thought of. TNG, like the Enterprise has always billed itself as like the flagship being served by the best of the best. But the success of the kids isn't really due to the kids having such a great plan. It's just that the adults are just so stupid and dumb. It's like the kids.
It's Home Alone.
It is Home Alone in space.
Right? The adults are so dumb that a kid can easily
like outmaneuver them, right? And that's why, like, had this. Also, let's think about Klingons and Romulans and Cardassians. That's a whole different story. Ferengis, not that hard to outsmart, right? But like, had this been like a Cardassian takeover? Oh hell no! There's no kid on Earth that would have been able to like save. They
would have airlocked those kids
like
before they transported a single adult to the planet.
Yeah.
They would have been like, oh no, we're not doing this.
So that would have been a really, really short episode. Anyway.
It would have. And a sad one.
On that note, thank you guys so much for nerding out with us. Next week is going to be so much fun. We're breaking down season 6, episode 8, A Fistful of Datas.
Woo, that's one of my faves.
I know. I can't wait to break it down. Thank you guys so much. We'll catch you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.